The gates of the Adeyemi mansion had never opened for a driver before until the morning Tunde. Bakare walked through them, unaware that the woman waiting inside would change the course of his entire life. The Lagos sun was already blazing at 7 in the morning when Tunde adjusted his faded blue shirt for the third time, staring up at the towering iron gates of the Adeyemi estate on Banana Island. He was 28 years old, the last of 6 children, and the only one who had never left Ogun State to chase a better life in the city. His mother had sold her wrapper collection to pay for his driving lessons 2 years ago, and now finally, he had been hired, not as a security guard, not as a gardener, but as the personal driver to one of the wealthiest families in Nigeria. He gripped the steering wheel of the gleaming black Range Rover like it was a newborn child, terrified he might scratch even a single inch of it. His new employer, Chief Adeyemi, was a shipping magnate whose name appeared in business magazines Tunde had only ever seen in barbershops. But it wasn't the chief who unsettled Tunde's heart that first morning. It was Chief Adeyemi's only daughter, Adize. She emerged from the marble staircase wrapped in quiet elegance, her heels clicking against the compound floor, sunglasses hiding eyes that Tunde would later learn had cried more tears than her father's wealth could ever wipe away. She barely looked at him as she slid into the back seat, murmuring an address in Victoria Island. And Tunde drove in silence, his hands trembling not from nervousness about the car, but from something he could not yet name. If you believe in second chances, in love that crosses every boundary society builds, and in stories that remind us kindness still matters in this world, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Whispering Tales Stories so you never miss what happens next. The weeks that followed tested Tunde in ways he never expected. Adize was not cruel, but she was distant, wrapped in a sadness she never explained. He learned, through whispered conversations among the household staff, that she had been engaged once to a wealthy businessman's son, a union arranged to merge 2 shipping empires. The engagement had ended in scandal 2 years ago, when her fiancé was discovered siphoning money from her father's company, leaving Adize humiliated, in the eyes of Lagos high society, and deeply distrustful of anyone who came near her father's wealth. Tunde understood in his own quiet way what it meant to be underestimated. Growing up in Abeokuta, he had watched his father struggle to feed 7 mouths on a mechanic's wages, watched his elder brothers drop out of school one by one to find work, watched dreams shrink into survival. He knew what it was to be looked past, to be seen as background rather than a person with a beating heart and unspoken hopes. So when Adize sat in silence during their long drives to her father's corporate events, Tunde never intruded. He simply drove steady and patient, offering nothing but the comfort of not being pushed. It was on a scorching afternoon in March, nearly 3 months into his employment, that everything shifted. Adize had asked him to take a different route home, one that wound through the busier streets of Yaba instead of the usual highway. Traffic crawled to a stop near a roadside market, and it was there, through the tinted window, that she noticed an old woman collapsed beside a fruit stand, her wrapper stained with the mangoes she had dropped, her body convulsing gently in the heat. Without thinking, without waiting for permission, Tunde threw the car into park in the middle of traffic, ignored the blaring horns behind him, and rushed to the woman's side. He cradled her head, shouted for water, and within moments had her sitting upright, fanning her with his own shirt sleeve, speaking to her in gentle Yoruba, calling her mama with a tenderness that made passers-by pause. Adize watched from the car stunned, as horns continued to blare, and Tunde remained utterly unbothered by the chaos he had caused, focused only on the frail woman in his arms. When the woman recovered, enough to explain that she had not eaten since the previous day, having spent all her morning earnings on medicine for her grandson, Tunde reached into his own pocket, not the company's, not Adize's, and pressed nearly all the cash he had into her weathered hands. He helped her gather her scattered mangoes, refused her tearful attempts to return the money, and only then walked back to the car, sweat-soaked and breathless, to find Adize staring at him with an expression he had never seen on her face before.
"Why did you do that?"
she asked quietly as he pulled back into traffic. "You don't even know her." Tunde considered the question for a long moment before answering. "My mother once told me that we don't help people because we know them. We help them because one day We might need someone to stop for us too. He said nothing more, but something in Daisy's chest cracked open that day. A wall she had spent 2 years reinforcing beginning to show its first fracture. From that afternoon forward, their drives changed. Daisy began sitting in the front seat instead of the back. She asked him questions about his family, his childhood, his dreams beyond driving. She learned that Tunde had once wanted to study engineering before his family's finances made university impossible, that he still borrowed physics, textbooks from a friend, and studied by candlelight when the generator ran out of fuel. Tunde, in turn, learned that beneath Daisy's polished exterior was a woman who had never once been asked what she wanted for herself, only what would benefit the family empire she was born into. Their friendship deepened through the dry season, built in stolen moments, a shared plate of suya from a roadside vendor while waiting for her father's meetings to end. Quiet laughter over old Nigerian films played on Tunde's cracked phone screen, the comfortable silence of two people who had stopped performing for each other and simply existed as themselves. Chief Adeyemi, consumed by business expansion talks with foreign investors, remained oblivious to the transformation happening in his own daughter's heart. It was Adaizi's older cousin, Folashade, who first noticed the change and who first voiced the fear that lived beneath every unspoken feeling between them. "Do you understand what you're risking?" Folashade warned her one evening, finding Adai's smiling at a text message from Tunde. "Your father will never accept this." "A driver, Adaizi? After everything that happened with your engagement, you would choose someone with even less than what you already lost?" The words stung precisely because they echoed Adaizi's own buried fears. That night she distanced herself, giving Tunde curt instructions and avoiding his eyes during their drives. Tunde, sensing the shift but never one to demand explanations he wasn't owed, simply continued showing up each morning with the same quiet steadiness he always had, never pressuring, never sulking, only present. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, when Chief Adeyemi suffered a mild stroke during a business dinner, collapsing in front of dozens of Lagos elites. In the chaos and terror of that night, it was Tunde who reacted first, carrying the chief to the car himself, driving through red lights and oncoming traffic to reach the hospital in record time, staying in the waiting room through the entire night not because it was his job, but because Adaiz was there, shaking and alone, and he could not imagine leaving her to face that fear by herself. When Chief Adeyemi awoke 2 days later, weakened but stable, he asked his daughter, who had stayed by her side through the darkest night of their family's life. Adaiz, exhausted and stripped of every pretense, finally told her father everything about the roadside rescue, about the quiet friendship that had become something far deeper, about the driver who had shown her more genuine care in 4 months than her former fiancé had in 2 years of engagement. Chief Adeyemi, humbled by his brush with mortality and moved by his daughter's raw honesty, called Tunde into his hospital room. What followed was not immediate acceptance, but something more valuable, a conversation man to man, in which the chief asked Tunde plainly what his intentions were. Tunde answered without flattery or ambition, speaking only of respect, of partnership, of wanting nothing from the family's wealth but everything from Adaizi's happiness. It was that honesty, stripped bare of performance, that finally softened the old man's guarded heart. If this story touched something in you, if you believe that real love sees the heart before the bank account, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances today. It truly means the world to us here at Whispering Tales Stories. Before we reach the end, if the word grace speaks to what you feel right now, drop it in the comments below. We read every single one. 6 months later, under the golden glow of a Lagos afternoon sun, Tunde Bakare stood at the edge of a modest but beautifully decorated garden, watching Adaiz walk toward him not as an heiress and her father's driver, but simply as two people who had found each other despite every wall the world had built between them. Chief Adeyemi, leaning on a cane but standing tall with pride, walked his daughter down the aisle himself, and as Tunde took her hands in his, he understood at last that kindness offered without expectation always finds its way back home, sometimes in the most unexpected and beautiful ways imaginable.